Um, so now I'd like to introduce our final Lit Talk of the afternoon, and we're honored to have a community leader who can, again, best be described as a force of nature. Susan Pepin was selected as the president and CEO of Virginia G. Piper Charitable Trust in 2014, and every day since she has found ways to make the Trust's mission a reality by helping enrich the health, well-being, and opportunity for the people of Maricopa County. This is demonstrated firsthand through multi-year partnership developed with the Institute for Sustainable Communities to help strengthen community resilience and social cohesion. She's also a strong champion of Read on Arizona as a model of collective community work, committed to data-driven solutions and focused on improving the lives of young children. And as a nationally recognized medical educator, clinician, researcher, and leader in the field of neuro-ophthalmology, we thought it absolutely appropriate for her to introduce our next Lit Talk presenter. So please help me welcome Dr. Susan Pepin.
Well, thank you, Terry, and thank you all for sticking it out. I know it's getting late in the day, but I am thrilled to be able to introduce the third Lit Talk, which I find very, very important. And all of you know in the work you do how important the health determinants around early childhood success are, particularly for literacy efforts. So, as Terry said, my name is Sue Pepin. I'm president and CEO of the Virginia G. Piper Charitable Trust. So it's my pleasure to introduce Healthy Vision, Healthy Reader, and our esteemed presenter, Dr. Andrew Arthur. First, a little bit to introduce the topic. Good vision is an incredibly strong predictor of academic performance, including reading, in school-aged children, and about 80% of learning occurs through the visual system. We know that about 5% of preschoolers will have a vision problem, and that rate increases to 25% at school age. That's 1 in 4 children. They will have a vision problem that, if left undetected, can be devastating. If it's untreated, it interferes with their ability to read and to learn and to thrive as children. So if you can't see well, there is a huge challenge to your learning to read. And the thing is, children, as you know, particularly young pre-verbal children, but even verbal children, they don't know better. They don't know that they're not seeing well. So vision screening is critical. If a problem with the child's visual system is identified early through vision screening, and importantly, the follow-up treatment, we remove a huge barrier to healthy development and learning. On a personal level, with years of working with children and adults with vision problems, I've seen both the incredible effects that early intervention and treatment for children can have on their lives. They can go on and thrive. And I've also seen the devastating effects when a child's vision problem isn't caught early enough and they don't do well in school, and it isn't detected until, it's not that it's too late sometimes, but the opportunity to really affect strong vision is lost. Because as we grow, we do lose the ability to fix certain things as we get more, not hardwired, but as we develop. So Eyes on Learning Initiative is a collaborative effort to really strengthen vision screening and, importantly, to strengthen the follow-up care and the systems that allow the screening and intervention to advance children's health. It works in collaboration with Read on Arizona, and it's a thrill to be able to be involved in really thinking about those health determinants around early childhood success that add to your efforts in educating our children. So now to Dr. Andrew Arthur. He is a true Arizona champion for children's vision and reading success. He has many roles, one being the medical director of pediatrics at El Rio Community Health Center in Tucson. There, he's responsible for 6 pediatric clinics with 30 pediatric providers, serving over 32,000 children. In addition to wearing that hat as medical director, he oversees El Rio's pediatric immunization program, the Reach Out and Read programs, the El Rio asthma program, and the Vision and Early Childhood Development Research Study. Dr. Arthur received his MD from Johns Hopkins University Medical School and a PhD in epidemiology from Johns Hopkins School of Hygiene and Public Health. He's also an outdoorsman, I don't know how he finds that time, who enjoys our beautiful Arizona weather by rock climbing, hiking, and swimming. And now, please join me in welcoming Dr. Andrew Arthur.
So good afternoon, and I'd like to thank Dr. Pepin for that very generous introduction and an outline of many topics that I'll be covering very briefly today. And I'll see if I can advance the slide. No, I'll have to ask my IT support to advance the slide. Could I have the next slide? Thank you. So with this talk today, I'm a believer in literacy, in language development, in child development, and in creating, next slide, this, a healthy, strong, engaged student who goes on to become a healthy, self-assured, and well-trained adult who becomes a useful and productive member of our society. So why should we care about vision screening? My goal is to convince you that early detection of vision problems is essential to having children thrive and do well in school. So it's a very common thing that we have visual problems. When we did a test at El Rio Community Health Center, we found that 5 to 10% of preschoolers 3 to 4 years of age had visual deficits, and many studies suggest that 1 in 4 children who are school age have problems with vision. Next slide. So let's talk about vision. What is vision? So it's a signal that comes from the eye that's interpreted by the brain. And on the right-hand side of your slide, you'll see the occipital cortex, and that's where the brain interprets an image. Next slide. So just a few points about this. I think it's a fascinating system. The brain takes this information from outside the body, dices it, slices it, and then recombines it to create thought and interpretation of what we see. The images from the right side of the visual field are interpreted by the left side of the brain. The images from the left side of the visual field are interpreted by the right side of the brain. And to be able to see in 3 dimensions, to fully appreciate the world around you, those two sides have to work in concert. And that's how we achieve what's called stereoscopic vision. So this is a wonderful thing. We're going to spend more time talking about the eye. So next slide. So next slide again, please. So most of you have probably seen a cutaway diagram like this before. The light or the image comes through the cornea, which does most of the bending of the rays of light. It passes through the lens, and then an image is focused on the back of the eye, the retina, which acts like a photographic plate in an old-time camera. Next slide. So when you have excellent vision, you can see the world around you, and you can appreciate it, and you can interact with it better. When you have a fuzzy view of the world, it's hard to not only appreciate that world, but it's hard to interact with it as well. Next slide. So there are dozens of visual problems. The most common ones are astigmatism, myopia, which is nearsightedness, and hyperopia, farsightedness. We'll talk a little bit more about astigmatism in the next slide. So if you can imagine, the eye is supposed to be shaped like a soccer ball or a beach ball, rounded when viewed from the front. When it's shaped more like a football, that's what we call astigmatism, and that leads to a blurred or distorted image coming through the eye. And this is actually the most common visual defect in preschool children. And so you notice I'm spending a lot of time talking about preschool children because I want to emphasize that early detection is key. Next slide. So this is what children are supposed to do. They're supposed to play. They learn from playing, reading, coloring, building, interacting with others. And if they can't use that visual image as efficiently as possible, they won't be able to do all these things that they're supposed to do. Playing is part of the work of being a child, also part of the work of being an adult. Next slide, please. So there is very good evidence that children at school or in school who can't see properly have reduced academic performance. There's also some evidence that babies who can't see well can't interact with their world. They don't have as good development as children who do have good vision. This can last up to 5 years. And so the deficits in their performance, their developmental performance, are concentrated in areas where the brain has to interpret an image, that's the visuocognitive, and where the brain has to use a visual signal to help them guide where they move their body. So that's the visual motor domain. So another study looked at preschool children and found that children with significant astigmatism weren't as ready to learn in school. So how do we detect visual difficulties? So parents can see a problem, and physicians, when they see a child, can often see a problem. Everyone is used to the standard E-chart in the hallway that we use, the Snellen chart, and other vision charts. But there's a new tool. There are automated vision screeners. We'll talk more about that. So how could a parent know that there's a vision problem? They could say, well, my child, he's walking into things, or his eyes are crossing, her eyes are crossing. And if this is dramatic, it's fairly easy for the parent to notice. And most parents would notice this, but if it's more subtle, it might take a physician doing an exam looking for an imbalance of the muscle, which could be a cue that the child is straining to see. This is that Snellen chart that we're familiar with, and this is very useful in someone who knows their alphabet and someone who can participate and interact with the examiner and understands, we are trying to help you. What if you don't know your letters? Then you have to interpret shapes like this, and I have a hard time knowing some of these shapes, so this is an LEA chart, and so I'm going to have a hard time. I think many of our preschoolers, when we used to use these charts, it became a comedy in the hallway because and the nurse would end up giving up and saying, unable to perform visual screening. So now we're relying on something better. This is one brand of visual screener, an automated vision screening device produced by Welch Allyn. And we decided that we should be screening all children beginning at 12 months of age. So prior to use of these automated screeners, we would screen starting at 3 years of age, and it really wasn't very effective for the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. It became much more effective for the 6 and above. But now we're screening down 12 months through 6 years using an automated screener, and we are using the Snellen charts for the 7 years and above. And then beyond that, well, what if you find someone with a defect? We want to make it easy for them to receive intervention. So we set up in-house clinics. And in the first year of this combined effort, which has been funded through a generous grant from the Piper Trust and is done in collaboration with the University of Arizona Department of Ophthalmology, we have 5,000 children in our population, 12 through 35 months of age. And the vast majority, over 80%, received a physical exam, and something new, teaching the clinicians and the nurses and the medical assistants that we should be doing this screening. We've convinced them enough that actually we have documented screening done in the first year of over half of these children. And so instead of sending the child out of our clinic to another medical facility, we brought the ophthalmologist or the optometrist into Elria. And we had over 200 children examined in-house, so the parent knew where to come. And about 1/3 of these were prescribed glasses. So what we don't know, we know that children who have poor vision have problems in school, problems with development. What we haven't proven yet is if we intervene early, can we make a significant difference in their developmental trajectory? If that is true, then it becomes a societal imperative to screen all children starting at 1 year of age. The other thing we're using is a new electronic dashboard in our electronic health record to try to flag the medical assistant and flag the provider saying, this is a child who requires screening. So in the end, this is what we want. We want happy, healthy children who are engaged in the world around them, learning numbers and letters, learning how to read, getting them ready to be successful in school and successful in society. So I think that early vision screening and intervention is a critical part of that process. Thank you for your attention.